Thanks for coming. Today we're going to talk about APIs and open banking. What does it mean for all of us? My name is Kieran O'Donnell. I work for a company called Avanade. We're a Microsoft consulting firm. You can find me on Twitter, Kieran J. O'Donnell. We'll jump in reasonably quickly. So first we'll talk about APIs. So APIs are not a desperately new concept. They're just one way for any system to talk to another system, kind of without humans being involved. Typically now when we talk about APIs, we're talking about kind of HTTP exposed APIs, using REST as the pattern for how we communicate, and then passing JSON or XML data between them. And we've got some open standards for describing them. So we've got API and Open API and Swagger as a way for us to kind of create standard APIs that other people's software can understand. The difference, I think, now compared to like APIs for the longest time, they were kind of closed APIs. They were inside your network, and you typically built them so you could have your own systems interacting with each other, passing data between them, and they weren't published to the internet, which meant because they were inside your network, they were kind of behind your own existing security layers. You didn't have to worry too much about kind of security and scale and those kind of problems. But now we're talking about open APIs. They're available publicly, so you can integrate them with kind of third-party providers and kind of build partnerships that way. You have to worry about the securing them, scaling them, all those kind of different challenges now. But the benefit of them is that they can hopefully be a revenue-generating product for them. So if you've got data to expose, if you've got integrations that you want to kind of leverage, they should actually be able to kind of increase the amount of business value that you can get. And so we see this a lot in the real world right now. So for quite a while, we've had websites that are able to provide the postage costs for when you're buying something online, and that's normally API integrations with some kind of postal service. We've got photo services that allow us to import photos directly from OneDrive or Google Photos, something like that. Travel sites that allow us to buy flights and hotels, cars, even theater tickets, all through that kind of one experience. Or Uber being able to auto-upload receipts into your corporate expense system. Right? All of these things are enabled through these kind of open APIs and partnerships. And so what we're really looking to do is gain kind of exponential value through this, right? To build a kind of ecosystem of partners kind of working together to kind of provide us with value. And so where that's starting to really become applicable is in the open banking space. And so if you're unaware what open banking is, it's really this drive that's happened really around the world for improved customer kind of satisfaction and experience in the banking industry. There has been regulation, so it's basically forced by regulation, making banks create open APIs which allow them to kind of share data. And so these APIs have allowed us as kind of consumers to be able to take part in the data sharing, and therefore third parties are spread up to kind of consume that data and provide us with some experiences. And so around the world there's been, as I said, regulation. Europe is the place where it's happened the most. The PSD2 regulation, which kind of spans all of Europe. In the UK, the Competition and Monetary Authority has expanded on that, but also in Hong Kong and Australia and in Mexico, there's been these regulatory pushes to kind of open up the banking ecosystem through APIs. One thing to note from this map is that there's no actual government regulation for the US. There is a strong influence in kind of Africa, but it isn't universal. But it is quite common to have the regulation driving it. And so broadly across all the different types of regulations, I think a lot of them are heavily influenced by Europe's, but you end up with these different types of third parties which interact through APIs. The primary one is the banks, and that's anyone who kind of holds an account where you have money. So that could be just your checking account, your current account, savings accounts. It can be investment accounts, anywhere where you kind of store value. They act as these account servicing payment service providers. They've got really cool and catchy names in the regulations. A new kind of type of service that's been created by the regulation is these information or aggregation services. So these account information service providers. And so we start to see those people that are providing you this overall view across all your accounts to help you with budgeting, to help you with understanding your own cash flow and things like that. This is kind of a new business kind of model that's been created by this regulation. And then the third one is payment services. So these payment initiation service providers enabling you to send money from you to somebody else. Sometimes that's a retailer, so these are like online payment systems that you can use to pay retailers, but it can also be from kind of consumer to consumer, so you can send money to your friend or family or something like that. And so in the US, as I said, there hasn't actually been any regulation of the open banking ecosystem. There have been industry consortiums that have kind of come together to drive it forward, but they're really taking their leadership from the customer demand, right? So we've seen a whole bunch of payment services start, and some of them are these kind of consumer to retailer ones like Samsung Pay or Google Pay. But PayPal's given the ability to us to kind of send money between us, and then Zelle and WePay are kind of much newer companies in this space, enabling direct payments between people. And then the kind of aggregation service providers, I think Mint's probably one of the best known ones in the US at least, but there's a whole bunch of them. Banktivity, EveryDollar, You Need a Budget is the one in the bottom right. And so this is a whole industry that's kind of sped up, not because regulation in the US at least, but because of customer demand. And so what does this mean in terms of consumers? I think one of the most important things that open banking means for consumers is that they have these standard expectations that are actually now codified in law, right? Which is different to other kind of user experience expectations, but the consumer is in control, is an important kind of part of the open banking regulation. They own their own data. It's them, it's their financial data, it's their kind of personal information, and they own it in that law, and they get to share it with whoever they want. Right, so these integrations enable them to share that data for a value that they want to derive, and those integrations are free. And so I think this is the first time that we've really had government regulation manage anything like this, and I think the fact that it's codified in law is kind of a big deal. And then on top of that, we've also got these kind of de facto standards that people are seeing, is that these integrations are near real time. That's just the way, like, the people that are providing the integrations have kind of been competing is on the kind of real time, the accuracy, the ease of the integration. There are also people who are expecting that they should be getting some kind of value add from these, because they own their data or they can choose who they share it with. You have to provide some extended value to the customer. And then the third one is that if they don't like the service, they can leave, right? They have the ability to stop sharing their data, to take it back, and kind of end their association with these different services. And I think it's a big change in the industry that this is really coming. I think it's really going to drive innovation. It's especially driving innovation in terms of open banking. And I think it represents disruption to that industry, which we can see again in the US, because even without legislative pressure, there's been this big drive to innovation. Companies like Zelle have started up, which was come from a consortium of different banks, WeChat, things like that. And as we've seen in the past, companies that don't join innovation in time tend to lose out, right? We've seen that with companies like Blockbuster Video, Yahoo Search, even Windows Mobile. If you can't keep innovating with people, then you end up losing out. And so now these consumers have got these expectations. They're bringing disruption to the industries that they bring them to, like open banking. I think what's going to happen is these customer expectations are going to become the new normal. They're going to take them to every industry that they interact with. And so innovation through APIs and partnerships are going to follow, not just in banking, where it's already kind of started. It's even starting in kind of telcos and insurance. And retail are starting to get these kind of a lot of integration and kind of open API strategies. But whatever industry you're in, this is going to bring kind of disruption and hopefully therefore innovation. And so we should all start to think about, even if we aren't in banking, how is this going to affect us? What are the kind of APIs that are going to make a difference in our industry? They're going to be disruptive to us, and how can we start moving towards that on our own? And so that does actually present a challenge to a lot of kind of existing businesses. A lot of people, like, you'll have some existing system of record with your existing data stores, and you want some kind of new experiences, and you want some partnerships. They're going to have systems, they're going to have experiences that they want to drive. And so a lot of companies don't currently have anything where this red box is. They're not quite sure what it is that goes there. How is it that you take your existing system of record and start to plug it into and a kind of unknown number of future experiences that you're going to end up building. So that's a challenge. Ooh, one step too far. The other challenge a lot of people have is that right now, that existing system and those systems of records aren't necessarily in the best state. They're not necessarily ready for the kind of innovation and disruption that's coming. A lot of our customers kind of see themselves in a balancing act between all the systems of record they have right now, the legacy kind of systems, the new security requirements that are coming in, especially as we're moving to the cloud, new business requirements that come flooding in for this kind of innovation and disruption, and so it's kind of challenging, right? It's going to be even more challenging to build these big scalable APIs on top of this balancing act, because these APIs are going to bring new challenges, right? As I said before, as we need to host these APIs publicly while still controlling access. Before, when we've done closed APIs, that's been inside your network. You're not really that concerned about like other people in your own enterprise kind of causing you problems. But as you open them up to the internet, that's definitely a concern. So you need to control access. We need to be able to manage versions of them. So it's all well and good getting some APIs out there, getting some integration done. But as that industry keeps moving forward, you're going to need to evolve those APIs to provide kind of new value, new fields, new actions or kind of controls, and you don't want all your existing integrations to break. So you need to have kind of concurrent published versions of your APIs. You need to be able to store data at scale. So as you start to expand, you get partnerships. Hopefully, you get more customers, more information, more things happening. Your kind of data estate's going to get much larger. As we said, a lot of the kind of disruption that's happening right now is about building these real-time APIs. So we need to be able to process updates to our data in near real time. We need to be able to post notifications to our partners. Part of that, not just us processing updates that we get from other people, but we need to be able to post those out to all the people that we integrate with through webhooks or whatever technology. We need to find some way to make that work. And then we need to keep it all running reliably. So as well as the challenge of kind of all of these things, we need to understand what happens if our system's up, are they down, what do we do when they're down, what causes it, all those kind of challenges as well. And now it's more public facing, it's more obvious to everybody when something goes wrong, so we need to kind of minimize those kind of challenges. And so these are all new kind of challenges and they require some kind of technology solutions. So you're all here at Microsoft Ignite, so you might be aware of this, but Microsoft has all of the ingredients in Microsoft Azure in order to make this kind of simple for you. So for right at the front, for like keeping the front door kind of secure, we've got things like Azure Traffic Manager and Load Balancer, making sure that we understand where people are coming from and we can get them into our data center. And then we've got API Management, which is a good layer for not just helping us secure our APIs, but also keeping our multiple versions published, for developing API portals on top of them, for like letting people really understand the kind of evolving journey of our APIs. But it does work well with identity and security management services that are in Azure, so we can start to build API products, we can secure them, we can like work on API keys or kind of different authentication schemes that way. And then in order to actually integrate with our system of record, which is one of the hardest things we have to do, there's a bunch of technologies kind of behind our APIs. We've got the standard kind of data storage, like standard Azure SQL, which a lot of people will be that kind of familiar kind of platform for them, but also Cosmos DB, which is a massively scalable, multi-region, multi-master, multimodal database. And then things like Azure Data Lake, machine learning and stream analytics to help us really process those updates in real time, provide aggregations, maybe to provide those kind of extra product value propositions that we want for our customers. And then in terms of implementing the actual API services themselves, Azure has a bunch of different options for that. So Azure Functions being like as a serverless kind of compute option. There's things like Azure Logic Apps that will help us kind of build out some kind of journeys and workflows and things like that as our services. And then if all else fails, there's containers where we can code anything up for our APIs and publish them into kind of Azure Container Service. And then underpinning all of that to help us understand how reliable we are, what's happening with our systems. There's Azure monitoring services like App Insights, which will help us be able to monitor all this. So there's all the tools that you need in Azure to be able to kind of build out these APIs. The real challenge is how do we do that when we're scaling our existing systems, right? We don't just want to pile open APIs onto the top of the existing challenge that our IT organization faces. a lot of the problems we have is, especially as we build open APIs and we want them to scale, we want people to use them, we want to drive demand to them. Are our existing systems able to meet that scale? They might be mainframes, they might be on-premise systems, they might have fixed hardware that currently run them. And so there's a lot of those challenges there. So we need kind of new approaches to build these APIs in a decoupled way. We really want them to kind of evolve and scale independently of the underlying systems. There's a lot of challenges to that. So at Avanade, we've got a process that we call digital decoupling. We've got some talks happening at our booth, which is over there, to kind of explain the digital decoupling. But the real challenge is going to be in how do you actually construct the integrations between your existing systems and these kind of new APIs. And it's something that we all need to be focusing on, because that disruption is definitely coming to an industry near you. So that's the talk. Feel free to rate the session. It's good to get the feedback through the app. Thank you.